As you guys know, long-range shooting can be exceedingly difficult, especially when you're talking about extreme ranges where there's a whole lot of different environmental and atmospheric conditions that are constantly changing. And as the shooter's laying behind the rifle, trying to focus on his breathing, his shooting position, and the nature of the target, really focusing in on the shot itself, a lot of these different factors can be difficult to keep track of. And he's going to lose a lot of his peripheral awareness as he focuses on his task at hand. So with that in mind, a spotter becomes extremely beneficial in the operation, and really all the different responsibilities and details that need to be paid attention to in this field craft really should be delegated amongst two different people. And that's why classically you have a spotter and a shooter team. And a lot more goes into it than just one guy shoots the rifle and one guy watches where the round hits. There's a whole lot of things that need to be kept track of in real time as conditions in the real world change. And the shooter is going to often lose his peripheral awareness as he's really getting dialed in for the shot, laying behind the rifle, focusing his attention on the target and trying to anticipate what the target's going to do. So in that case, a spotter becomes exceedingly beneficial. So in this video, we're going to discuss some of the different ways that these different responsibilities can be delegated to the spotter and the shooter. Now, there's a lot of different ways that this is done. It depends on where you're at in the world, which outfit you might be working with. A lot of different outfits have different ways of setting this up. But this is just a general overview of one of the more common ways that these responsibilities are delegated. And we're not going to really talk about really before the FFP. We're just going to be focusing on the final firing position here. There's a lot of other detail that goes into this, obviously, as you're approaching the target, from your objective rally point or whatever you're doing. And in this video, we're just going to cover once they actually reach the firing position. So as you get your spotter and your sniper approach the FFP, usually your spotter is going to be the one taking point because he usually has access to a weapon that might be more appropriate for taking point. A lot of these guys are carrying M4s with M203s on them, or an SA-80 or whatever it may be. He's going to be more equipped to take point, and a lot of times the shooter with the precision rifle will be kind of holding on to the tail back there, keeping things straight back there. So, but once you actually arrive at the final firing position, both guys are going to start setting up their position. Now, the spotter is going to base his spotting position on where the sniper is actually building his firing position. So the first thing that's going to occur is the sniper is going to build a nice, steady, comfortable firing position like we discussed in the prior video. And he's going to take into effect all those different things that we discussed in detail. He's going to make sure that he's got good cover, that he's in a good concealed position, that's relatively comfortable in such a way that he's going to be able to have a nice natural point of aim from a concealed position and all that. Now, once he's relatively situated and he's got his weapon pointed at the target area, the spotter is going to have a good idea of where he's going to need to set up, because the spotter is going to try to set up on the 6 o'clock position of the sniper if possible. Sometimes you might not be able to get higher than the shooter to see over the top of his head, so you might have to go to the 530 or the 545 position. But the idea here is that the spotting scope should really be set up as close to in line of sight of the bore of the shooter as possible, because as we discussed in earlier videos, an optic with higher magnification, like a spotting scope, is going to have a narrower field of view, in which case you're going to have less wiggle room to actually spot the bullet trace. So you're going to have to be almost perfectly in line with the path of the bullet. So you're going to have to be right behind the shooter in so much as far as possible. If the spotter sets up his optic beside the shooter, sometimes you can pick up on bullet trace, but it becomes a lot more difficult with every foot you add to that. So the classic position is like the 530 or the 5 o'clock position. If it's a right-handed shooter, it's good to be on the right side of the shooter as far as where the spotter's set up, because that's going to allow you to kind of see what's going on with the bolt of the rifle. He's going to be able to watch where the windage knob is dialed in, and he's going to be able to confirm the firing solution more easily from the right-hand side of the rifle. So that's why the 530 position as opposed to the 630 position on the left side. Unless the rifle and optic's situated in a different way or something. But you're going to want to have the spotter be able to kind of visibly verify everything that the shooter is actually doing, especially when he starts dialing in the optic, because as you know, the shooter's going to be under a certain degree of stress, and mistakes do get made, and the spotter is there to catch that stuff. So the spotter is setting up directly behind the shooter in so much as far as possible. So once you get the position set up, the spotter's going to go ahead and start to draw up a range card. And they actually make range cards you can get from your unit, or if that's not available to you, you can buy them online if you think that you need a range card. A lot of guys just use paper, a notebook or whatever. It doesn't matter what kind of paper it is. And what you're going to do is a spotter is going to start designating target areas and fields of fire. And really, we're going to get into this more in a later video on exactly how to set up an effective range card. But he's going to pre-designate all the ranges to these different target areas so that when a target does present itself, he kind of has a cheat sheet. He already knows basically how far it is, and he just has to make minor adjustments. And he's going to figure out the firing solutions as the day goes on. So after the range card is set up, and the shooter's going to get a hold of one of these range cards as well, and they're both going to practice as they're laying there waiting for the target to present itself. They're going to be practicing calling out possible targets and identifying different target reference points and things like that, and verifying the ranges to them. And that's what they're going to do with their downtime, as well as scanning for targets. But after all that is complete, your spotter or your shooter is going to identify a target. And a lot of times, it depends on which kind of outfit you're working with. But for example, in the Army, the way they prefer to do it is a spotter will usually be the senior NCO, and he is going to be the one who actually designates targets and makes the calls. And the shooter is actually just going to be the guy who's worrying about pulling the trigger and getting on target. So the spotter's making most of your decisions in the field. Some different outfits, like in the Navy and the Marine Corps, sometimes they have it set up the other way. And a lot of times the shooter is the senior ranking member of the team, and he will actually make all the tactical decisions. So it depends on what kind of outfit you have. But one way or the other, someone's going to identify and designate a target. And usually that's the spotter. And once the target is designated, the sniper is going to start to move the sights of the rifle onto that designated target area. And what they're going to do is they're going to use the range card to communicate exactly where that target is. And so they're going to both be on the same page in very short order because they have efficiently communicated the information to each other. So once the sniper is getting on target, the spotter is going to immediately start determining the range to the target. And the spotter is going to be the one who has access to the laser rangefinder if that's being used. He's going to be the one behind the theodolite if they're going to actually survey it and get an exact range. Or he's going to be the one who's going to do the math. And he'll ask for a mil reading from the shooter through the optic of the rifle scope, in which case the shooter would communicate how many mils tall the target is, and then the spotter is going to take that information and calculate the range to the target, as we discussed how to do in a prior video. So after the range to the target is designated, what they're going to do is they're going to calculate a precise firing solution. And the way they're going to do that, the spotter is primarily going to do this. The shooter is going to be preparing himself and getting steady and getting comfortable. He's going to be focusing on getting ready for the shot. And the spotter is going to be the one who really fine-tunes the firing solution. And hopefully, if he's done his homework ahead of time and he has the range card properly drawn up, it's just going to have to make minor adjustments to the firing solution that was pre-designated. So in that case, the spotter is going to communicate that information to the shooter, and he's going to index the appropriate elevation and traverse settings to the optic. And the whole time this is going on, the spotter is going to be clearly communicating these things and verifying that the shooter is in fact indexing everything properly. They're going to be cross-checking each other all the time. And the shooter's going to maintain good communication with the spotter at the same time, making sure that the spotter knows that the shooter did hear what he said correctly. So all this is being done with the proper communication in mind. And we're going to discuss communication on the next video. So what's going to happen next is the spotter, after he reports the final firing solution to the shooter is going to notify the spotter of his readiness to fire. And then he's gonna have something that he's gonna say, I'm on target, I'm ready to go, or whatever. And whatever slang you guys are gonna use, whatever jargon you're gonna use, you're gonna communicate that to each other. And then once the spotter, who has peripheral awareness of everything else going on, the shooter's gonna be really focused on that target. So the spotter's gonna have to make the tactical decision of when to order the shot based on what's all going on out in the field. And then your shooter's gonna have the relatively simple job of following his muscle memory, employing fundamentals of marksmanship, and delivering a nice shot. Now, your spotter obviously is going to be observing all this through the spotting scope, keeping a close eye on the target, trying to anticipate movements along with the shooter. And also, the spotter in real time is also going to be keeping track of climatic changes, wind direction changes, anything like that that's going to throw off the shot and warrant a recalculation of the firing solution. And if that's the case, the spotter's going to give the shooter a red light and tell him to quit. Hold up on that shot. He's going to adjust the firing solution or give him a corrective hold-off value. But once it's good, he's going to give him that green light again and say, go ahead and make the shot. And then the shooter will then deliver the shot and follow through, like we discussed on a prior video. Immediately thereafter, this all happens real fast. The spotter is going to critique the shot. He's going to be observing the bullet trace through the spotting scope if he set it up properly. And we're going to discuss how to actually spot the shot in much more detail on a future video. And based on exactly where he discerns that round landed, he's going to calculate appropriate correction of fire. And then the shooter will apply that correction and make an accurate and timely re-engagement. And also, one thing I forgot to mention here is that the shooter, immediately after he fires that round, he's going to make an accurate and timely shot call. So if he pulled the shot, for example, if he wiggled, or if he discerns that he made some kind of mistake, he's going to call that immediately so that everyone knows what's going on so that they can apply the proper correction. And then what you have is immediately after the shot is made, your shooter is going to prepare to re-engage if necessary, waiting on re-engagement orders from the spotter. If the spotter discerns that the target is not down or that a new target is presented itself to redesignate. So that's kind of how that goes. And so these different responsibilities incorporate all the different things we've been learning about throughout this series, and it all comes down to a relatively streamlined procedure that and this should be practiced all the time in the field to where it becomes second nature. This isn't something you want to have written down so that you have to look at it. This is just going to be something that both of you are going to know the deal. And what goes hand in hand with all these different responsibilities is the sniper and the spotter's communication to one another. And that needs to be a streamlined process as well so that information can get correctly relayed to both the guys on the team so that they're not miscommunicating. One of the biggest problems that you're going to have out there in the field is miscommunication of data or failure to communicate at all. And one of the guys didn't know that he was supposed to correct for the shot, or they weren't communicating properly. So that's what we're going to focus in on the next video here is spotter sniper communications, and we're going to try to give you an example of what that's going to look like in the field and how the communication is going to go down. But it's a relatively simple delegation of responsibilities. Your spotter is going to be focusing in on most of the technical stuff. He's going to maintain peripheral awareness, and he is going to be keeping track of all the different things as they change in real time. All the complicated stuff the spotter has to worry about. The shooter is going to actually have a relatively easy job. He's going to be trying to stay comfortable, focus in on the task at hand, concentrate all his attention on the fundamentals of marksmanship, and delivering the shot effectively. So the shooting demands a lot of brain energy in of itself, because there's a lot of subtleties that do take quite a lot of attention to effectively employ. But the spotter is going to be the one doing most of the thinking. And actually, the more difficult job out of the two is by far, in my humble opinion, being a spotter, at least if he's a good spotter, because he's going to have to calculate firing solutions under pressure. He's going to have to maintain peripheral awareness under pressure and notice that the wind had stopped or changed directions or changed wind speed and call that on the fly. Or as the target starts to move, he's going to have to be able to quickly calculate the proper lead for the target. And all that stuff, especially when it's happening at the same time, can be exceedingly difficult. And the shooter will assist in this as well, especially if the shooter is more experienced. The shooter can make a lot of these calls as well. And but it depends on what kind of outfit you have and how you have the team delegated as far as seniority. But that's one of the typical ways that a team can be set up. So in our next video, we're going to discuss spotter-sniper communication.